Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the AIM North America podcast series from the Food Supply Chain Work Group. AIM North America drives collaboration and standardization of AIDC technologies to make traceability scalable. Every month, our work group helps turn regulation into action. Today's topic, the FSMA 204 compliance extension. The deadline moved, but requirements haven't. So proactive companies are using this time to prepare. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how they're unlocking business value beyond compliance. So let's get started. I'm Amber Ingebretson, Solutions Consultant at PLM Trustling. I'm joined by the chair of our work group, Julie McGill, as well as fellow work group members, Lucy and Christian. Please introduce yourselves.
All right. Thanks so much, Amber. So I'm Julie McGill. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain Strategy and Insights at Trustwell. For those of you who are not familiar with Trustwell, we are the collaboration between ESHA, which is nutritional labeling, and Food Logic, which is a supplier compliance, traceability, and recall management platform. In my role here at working with AIM, I am the co-chair of our AIM North America Food Supply Chain Work Group, which brings together solution providers, industry stakeholders, and other industry partners to address industry challenges, as Amber spoke about, through the use of AIDC technologies. And with that, I'll hand it to Christian.
Yep, great. Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Christian Hahn. I'm the Director of Technical Business Development for FIG Electronics and have been an employee here for the last 3 years. Here at FIG, we manufacture RFID hardware. So fixed readers, mobile readers, antennas, accessories, etc., across the HF or high frequency and UHF ultra high frequency frequencies, and we've been in the industry for roughly 60 years. We work closely with AIM in these type of forums and activities. Certainly address all kinds of verticals too with our business and with RFID, with heightened focus on the food beverage industry. That's why we're all here, right? To get into more particulars about FSMA 204 and related technologies. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Lucy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy Angarita, Director of Supply Chain Visibility at GS1 US. I've been working here for the last 5 years, working with different companies across industries to gain operational efficiencies, traceability, and supply chain visibility by leveraging GS1 standards. We at GS1 are known as the barcode people because there's about 10 billion scans globally every day of barcodes that we license those unique identifiers for, called global trade item numbers. But really what we do is we bring companies together to collaborate, to find solutions to their common problems throughout the supply chain. We're neutral, non-for-profit. So our idea is to have everyone just talk and work together in a very collaborative environment. And prior to GS1 US, I worked with IPC, the supply chain arm for the Subway restaurant chain. We implemented end-to-end traceability across our whole supply chain, and we were able to measure tangible ROI. So all different partners within the supply chain were involved, and it is my passion. It's a very near and dear to my heart topic. And also, I've been very focused on FSMA 204, just helping companies understand what are the actionable steps they can take in order to meet these requirements for the rule. And I'm very honored to be here and work with AIM on this effort.
When we think about ROI, it's not just about the company, but it's also about the consumer and the impact it has on the price of groceries. Everybody is talking about that, right? So what are the other, beyond compliance, the benefits and the ROI of implementing FSMA 204 now, even though it's not required for another 30 months?
Yeah, I'll start there. Just looking back, it's like for traceability, lots of companies have had robust traceability programs in place well ahead of the rule. Lucy gave the example of her former role at Subway. And for companies, knowing, what you received, what you produced, and what you shipped, that's part of our supply chains today. But having lot level information, understanding freshness information, pack dates, expiration dates, and also sharing data in a standardized way, those are things that are not as common, right? There's some that do it, but not all, right? It's not ubiquitous across the industry. But having that lot level visibility, which is part of FSMA 204, right? Lot level visibility, that can have significant impact to your operations. And several years ago, I worked with a regional distributor who was providing data, traceability data, to one of their operators. And there was a worker at this distributor in the warehouse that was having to implement GS1128 scanning. They were scanning those case labels to capture G10 lot and date information. And what he realized was he could use the scan data not only to meet his customer's requirement, but also to use it for his own internal operations. And so he changed their receiving process and their put away processes, where he was incorporating the pack dates from the fresh produce items to manage freshness. So he changed their receiving and put away processes from FIFO, which is first in, first out, or FIFO to FIFO, which is first expired, first out. And so using that data, he saw better turns, he's had better product visibility in their warehouse, and fresher product was being delivered to their customer. And their customer just happened to be measuring freshness as part of that traceability data. So they were seeing an improvement in what was going into those stores. And so when you think about that big picture, it's not just benefiting him, within the four walls of the warehouse. He's got a happier customer, and then they could leverage that to win other business. Hey, we have such good visibility and we're able to track in certain ways that can be used to your advantage to win business with other potential customers.
That's a very familiar story, Julie.
I
And I
know,
would like to
Lucy.
I
I
would
didn't
like
want to
to
name
add
names.
I would like to add to that we actually, because we wanted to partner with our trading partners, actually, we wanted to show them the benefit of doing this. Many on their own decided to start scanning inbound. We had said, as you deliver the product, scan at the restaurant. Well, they saw this over the years. They started scanning inbound for their warehouse management systems, their stock rotation, and their mispicks got reduced, even eliminated. We measured with statistical process control charts over 3 years, and the product that was delivered out of freshness for those receiving and scanning those barcodes at receipt, those got almost down to zero. Over 3 years, we measured this, so it was really so significant and eye-opening to see that how this really helped distribution. And also we could pinpoint the issues. If there was issues with the product, we would know exactly where the issue was and be able to fix it quickly instead of trying to figure out anywhere in the supply chain where the issue could have happened. So better sourcing decisions, better forecasting. Our team started looking at demand and supply planning in a different way because you have that log code information. You have that expiration date information. What product, how much, and what are the dates? That's huge.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad we're talking about FIFO versus FIFO. And Christian, do you want to talk a little bit about how when you're able to have the visibility of expiration and being able to track freshness throughout the food supply chain, how does that impact waste when it comes to ROI?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, obviously with improved inventory management, you're impacting your efficiency, which impacts or results in minimized waste. These are core, you know, uh, results of implementing like technologies, providing this data capture framework. You had mentioned, and this addresses ROI as a whole. Where is the ROI beyond just compliance? We know compliance is, kind of what we're talking about here, right? With FSMA 204, how do we meet the requirements? But I think there are some obvious things here that we all can agree upon. There's also some outlying kind of points that I wanted to bring up. From just a simple, providing this data is going to allow, this elimination of a contaminated food in an expedited manner. So obviously, we're going to be reducing these stories of illness and death, which I think we can all agree that we would like to do.
Mhm.
In addition, audits for these type of businesses. I'm saying the A word again, the audit word that seems to scare everybody on how to get a timely audit done. Nobody wants to do it. It gets done, in an unautomated fashion a lot of times, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. It takes forever. I think with these systems in place, it's going to reduce the stress around these audits. These audits are going to be less scary and intimidating. The data is going to be readily available. It's easy to obtain. And these audits are going to become a lot more rudimentary. So that's a really good benefit of not just complying, but having these systems in place to provide that data. Safety and sanitary practices are going to be reinforced, and they're going to be improved upon, which is going to result in an overall supply chain transparency. And just ensures better and more accurate tracebacks during outbreaks too. We mentioned like being able to understand exactly when those dates are of the food production and processing. This data collection is going to have those dates, right? So we can get exactly back to that point of traceability for that particular food in question and eliminate it from circulation. One thing I was in doing some preparation for this podcast, overall technology for traceability can reduce the scope of a recall somewhere between 50 and 95%. And I know that's a wide range, but I think if we can get up to, really minimizing what a recall would look like that significantly, that's something we obviously need to pursue. These origin stories of products are, I guess, bottom line, the origin stories of these products it's just so important, and we need to really, instill this confidence in the product packaging and the promoting of brand loyalty with our customers. And this is only being done or being recognized by providing the full traceability of the product through the supply chain. And that's your ROI right there.
Mhm.
And I have a couple of tangible measures that we took also in this traceability case study for IPC Subway, where we actually measured just cleaning up master data for that traceability piece. We were able to talk about $1.3 million in cost avoidance that we gained by just cleaning up master data. And this is from truckload optimization and material handling from just one, the supplier to a specific location. Because the data was wrong, we were wasting a lot of resources there. And then the other part, after we implemented traceability and using GS1 standards, we were able to automate the way that inventory was managed at the restaurant. So it was a application, an iPhone application. You would go in there and you could easily scan a barcode, It will tell you how much you would need to order, etc. Based on that, we were able to quantify $72 million in cost avoidance by automating the way that restaurants made their orders, handled their inventory. It wasn't a little pencil and paper and typing on the POS anymore. So there's all these added benefits that don't have to do with traceability, that in the end, they're really hard to quantify when you're making the investment, but it will pay off.
Yeah, and I think, Lucy, just to add to that, it's like oftentimes people want to get straight to the, okay, I'm capturing all this data and I'm sharing all this data. But if what you just talked about, if you don't have good, accurate data as the foundation, you can't do all the cool stuff.
Yep.
If you don't have a good foundation of product information, that I've got the right information, and that you're in sync with the latest version of that product. Because a lot of manufacturers over the past 20 years have been reducing like packaging. They're changing to recyclable materials, etc. And if you have an older version of that product, the weights might be off, the size is off. I mean, how many times have you been in the back of a restaurant and they go to put something away and the shelves of the refrigerator aren't big enough to hold that box, etc.? I mean, it happens every day. And anytime those little things happen, they become big things because you're pulling people away from the front of the store or the front of the restaurant. And instead, they're spending their time back there rearranging shelves in a refrigerator to get something. And so I cannot stress enough that with with FSMA 204, companies have an opportunity to add that data cleanup piece as part of their project, which will only make their traceability data better, but they might find those hidden things like Lucy was talking about, which then add up to big dollars in savings.
I think, Julie, too, to add on that, from a overall traceability, we can get to the item level too, right? We
Mm-hmm.
talk about lot level, we talk about pallet level, we talk about case level.
Mm-hmm.
Item level is very important here too. So that traceability of really getting to that particular cart, right? There's so many errors that can occur along the way, even with technology. But being able to trace that item level, supply chain origin story, entry exit, is so important.
I would like to add that, when you see recalls in the papers online, when a company has a robust traceability program, there are probably 100 times in the background that they have been able to prevent, affected food from being served to customers. And that is also something that you can't measure, because traceability is an insurance policy, right? So it's something that you pay for every month, but you don't see the value until
Yeah.
an accident happens.
Yeah. Over and above compliance too, Amber, right? As we've been saying this entire time. I think, we even see it, from a business perspective, chargebacks, right? Saying, we expected this amount of items just from a logistics standpoint. I think, FSMA and traceability and visibility, it all kind of leaks into this overall logistics of the company. But, chargebacks, I reference is part of it, right? So we expected to receive, X amount of items and we received Y. Well, again, from an ROI perspective, if you have that complete process or that complete history, that's a lot easier to prove what left, what arrived, and really being able to produce that history from an accurate data standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Amber, I think just to build on what you were talking about as well, it reminded me of, that whole idea of building a food safety culture. right? And I think a lot of companies have changed the way that they look at food safety from the standpoint of it's not just a checklist, right? This is how our company does business. This is how we do our everyday tasks. And companies are helping folks understand how this little thing that you do here, whether it's checking in food at the back door, and checking those boxes, whether I'm
Scanning
in
a
the
barcode.
warehouse and I'm doing my inspection, that they understand how this thing that they do here affects all these other things, right? Whether that be getting safe food on the plate in a restaurant, storing things properly at a distributor to ensure, right, that product's at the right temperature. There's a whole host of things that are tied to traceability that are also part of that whole food safety culture, which is I make sure that all these steps happen so that not only can we trace the product, but the product itself is, it's the right temperature, it was cooked to the right, temperature, etc. And that what's put on the plate or what you're buying at the store is is not only delicious but also safe.
Yeah. And Julie, isn't that the expectation? Like, we never really think about it. We just expect these systems to be in place, checks and balances to be in place, and we don't think about it until we see that alarming story and we start questioning, like, how did this happen? Aren't there systems in place to not allow this? And I think that's the whole origin behind
Yeah,
it.
there's been several studies where what the consumer expectation is and what the reality is in our food supply chain are vastly different, right? Consumers assume everything can be tracked. And Amber, to your point earlier about the regulations on what we put on our bodies versus what we put into our bodies, um again, there's a disconnect between consumer expectation and the reality of our food supply chain. So it's really it's upon the shoulders of every role in the supply chain to deliver that safety and all those things. And that's part of that whole the FDA's new era of smarter food safety, right? Changing kind of how we look at our role in the supply chain.
And I want to add one more point to everything you guys are talking about. Don't wait to be perfect.
Yeah.
We're talking about being able to contain the product that's impacted before it gets served. We have a story like that. It's also in the case study where we had 7 cases of product that were impacted, and it could have been anywhere in 700 locations. Now, how long that would have taken to find the product? I mean, going restaurant by restaurant. And we actually were able, because we had some scanning happening at some restaurants, we found initially, I believe it was 4 cases immediately, but then we were missing the others. Well, we looked at similar routes, the same routes that went to those stores. We called those stores up first. And within 2 hours, we had every single case of impacted product where, 2 hours versus, all it would have taken if we didn't have at least some of the data. You could gain a lot of benefit from just starting and using what you have. It's huge. The impact can be very big.
Okay, so rapid fire. What should companies be doing right now to meet FSMA 204 requirements?
Don't wait. One thing we like to say is do not wait to see what happens. If you haven't started yet, start now. I mean, there's many that are continuing their efforts, but this is just not going to go away. So, if you haven't started, there's so many tools and so many things that we've done to make it easier for those that haven't began the journey. Don't do this alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Leverage what others have done. We have the GS1 US work groups, we have AIM, we have PTI, we have NFI. Like so many associations are helping their members to move this forward. And mapping out your process, mapping out understand what your systems look like, what your physical and digital processes look like, and understand where the gaps are. There's nothing like a drawing to put it together. And the other thing we like to say is prioritize. Don't focus on every single supplier, every single trading partner, or every single product you have. Look at the highest volume. Start there. That's where you get the biggest bang for the buck and the low-hanging fruit. That's how you minimize risk as well. And don't let yourself get bogged down by exceptions or scenarios that aren't like the regular part of your process. Yes, there's these scenarios we have to account for, the store transfer, what happens if I donate product, etc. Yes, but don't spend too much time on that. Just look at the biggest volume that you can actually work with, the suppliers that are more ahead of the curve in terms of using technology or ASNs, but then also plan for the smaller ones and continue to support those smaller trading partners, and build up, even if it's an Excel sheet, if you use standards, if you use that common language, you can continue to communicate and connect the dots, regardless of the system or technology.
Yeah.
Okay. So 80-20 rule.
80-20 Pareto, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points, Lucy. I think, to jump in, sorry, Julie, you know, we're actually celebrating the date right now of when FSMA 204 was supposed to be enacted. We're January 2026 right now,
Yeah.
right? And even prior to some of my earlier comments where my engagements have been, more energy, more interest, more activity around putting systems in place or preparing for compliance, this preparation and planning should be done by a lot of these businesses already. So in my opinion, these businesses shouldn't be looking at pilots or proof of concepts. Even though the date was extended, which I think we're all kind of like, how are we actually going to meet the January 2026 date, even with all these conversations and interest? Like that's a big deal. And having only been extended about 6-ish months ago, but deployments or phased approaches should be in place, or there should be a framework on how to deploy the systems that are going to provide the data ultimately to comply with FSMA 204. I think, for me, in my opinion, my business and who I, interact with, systems like this can take time to deploy, but it's not because of the technology. And for me, RFID obviously is what's near and dear to me, and in my day-to-day. But it's not the technology that is the long pole in the tent here. It's these systems touch so many, not just individuals within the business, but so many internal systems that already exist, that haven't accounted for this new entry of a system to provide this data. There's just a lot of impacts here, and there's a lot of people that need to get educated and aware of what needs to be done to prepare their internal infrastructure. Whether it's just simple network access, storage, the security, the reporting, all of these things get impacted. To meet these compliancy dates, this framework, and this, I like to refer to it as a phased approach. So phase one needs to be developed, I would say, by Q2 of this year, because 30 months, or by that time, call it 24 months or 2 years, is a lot closer than everybody thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I would, building on what you just said, Christian, as well as Lucy, use those materials from the associations and the industry groups. They have created the checklists, not only based on the regulation, but based on their experience, right? They've been there, they've done this. Many of them have implemented robust traceability programs. So when they have these, methodologies in place, it's for a reason. They know that, hey, do this, do that. And they even have things like Lucy said, don't, it's progress, not perfection. So, put this in place, test it out, do a pilot with a partner, etc. You don't have to have everything ready to go to exchange data with a partner. And the other thing I cannot stress enough is communication. Talk to your trading partners, talk to your internal teams. Great example is if you're a salesperson and you get a Dear Valued Supplier letter, that better not sit in your inbox, right? Your FSMA team needs that letter. And companies are tracking those letters, right? So who are we getting them from? What are the common threads in those letters, right? So what are the shared requirements? Most of the letters that I've seen, people are asking for GTINs for product identification. Many are enhancing their EDI programs. Some are asking, when it comes to AIDC, I've seen everything from GS1128s, 2D barcodes. There's some that are using RFID. So there's a whole host of requests and requirements. You want to make sure that you're communicating with your trading partners, not only understanding what they're expecting, what are their timelines, right? Because they might have a timeline. I've seen letters where they have one timeline for, hey, here's when I need you to identify, if you're a supplier, which of these items are on the FTL for what you sell to me. Then there's another timeline for when they expect you to send shipping data. Tracking formats, speaking of shipping data, what formats will they accept? Are they enhancing their existing 856? Do they use a third-party software traceability system? Or, some are saying, don't send me anything. I expect you to capture and store the data on behalf, and if I need it, I'm going to come to you for that data. And all of those have, work that needs to be done. That last one, especially, the FDA, if you're managing data on behalf of another partner, you have to have a legal agreement in place that's part of your traceability plan that you can show to the FDA that says, I don't actually capture and store the data. This, my partner does. So there's a lot of things, a lot of nuances. And so back to your question, Amber, is like, what do they need to do now? It's like, start testing your traceability plan. You might not have the whole thing done, but you probably, at this point, you should have most of it done.
Yep.
And you should be testing it out.
So let's talk about technology and what that means for the food supply chain. Beyond the barcode, what tech is getting attention? What should we be looking for, not just in 30 months, but in, 5, 10 years? How can we get ahead? And start with you, Christian.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I've mentioned it before. I work for an RFID company. So RFID is a proven technology for track and trace type use cases. It directly applies here, obviously, to the supply chain for movement of food items. And businesses that are looking to comply with FSMA 204 should strongly consider RFID, and many are. There are numerous benefits to the RFID technology. So I think to name a number of them, right? So with RFID, it's more of an automated technology for those who might not know, right? It's not manual in terms of scanning. There's ways to deploy the technology where data can be captured not just in an accurate, but an automated fashion. So these RFID tags can automatically record, product movement and data like the lot numbers and the dates and the locations and all that information that we've been talking about that can be stored about the product without the manual scanning or the line of sight to the product or the tag. This reduces human error and ensures that accurate FDA reporting in lieu of something that a human might do in a manual format. For FSMA compliance, RFID tags can be read at these key events, and we've referenced CTEs, or these critical tracking events. Examples such as points of manufacturing, specific refrigeration data points, these logistics and transportation transit points, entering or exiting a building, creating these RFID tag read points for these critical tracking events, supports this access to product origin, the manufacturing details, and what I've referenced regularly here, the logistical, these timestamps, which are critical for tracing the movement of the goods and addressing the safety issues and potential recalls. Provides the real-time visibility, right? So the continuous tracking and conditioning monitoring, the temperature, the refrigeration, the humidity for these perishable goods. It helps maintain the cold chain and prevent spoilage, and again, look to avoid the recalls and these type of events. Improved inventory management goes hand in hand with RFID. Automates the stock takes, increases inventory accuracy, helps manage the freshness and the stock rotation of the food products, reduces waste, all benefits, and what the FSMA mandate is looking to do. RFID is certainly a viable technology to provide that data. Streamlining operations, boosts efficiencies in the warehouse, the manufacturing warehouses of the foods, manages these reusable assets better, and the integration of this data into existing systems can be quite seamless. Ultimately, RFID technology and its infrastructure helps to create a digital record of the foods journey, and ensuring that data is ready available for these FDA audits and ultimately for compliancy.
Great. And Lucy?
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing, and it's not really that new, but we're seeing a lot of focus now and interest in the 2D barcodes, specifically the GS1 data matrix. So, previously the most widely adopted barcode for food traceability has been the GS1 128. I mentioned because of produce traceability initiative. That has been something that, it is very common and implemented in many different, scenarios. However, with the 2D barcode, specifically GS1 data matrix, companies are seeing that it has the same language behind it as the GS1 128, but it's a two-dimensional barcode. So what this means is the same software companies have been using to ingest this data and understand it, separate it, parse it, and understand it. You can use that same software. You don't need to come up with new software. You just need to configure it to capture the additional data, because it allows, instead of just 48 characters, which is what the GS1 128 enables, it can capture up to 2,300 something characters. So it's a lot more robust. It has error correction. Basically, if you have a GS1 128 barcode and it gets scratched or it gets smudged or something happens to it, you can't read it. The GS1 data matrix 2D barcode, specifically, you can scratch it or something happens to it, you can still scan it because of the error correction component. So that also makes it quicker to scan. That is something that for FSMA 204 is a big plus, because there's the attribute that people have been losing sleep over, which is the traceability log code source. We can put a traceability log code source reference, GLN, in that barcode and point to master data to, for all that other information about that location, where the product was packed, where that log code got assigned, which is something, that is a big plus for those that haven't yet completely implemented ASNs. And they're in the process of that. You have all that data in one barcode in one case. So we just recently have a new discussion group around 2D barcodes and the application of that in logistics distribution, specifically for FSMA 204. We want to know what other resources industry needs to be able to implement and leverage this technology. So we will welcome anyone who wants to join. You don't have to be a member of GS1 US. You don't have to be part of it. You just need to let us know if you want to join. So you could let AIM know, and we will be happy to connect you with our group.
Great. Julie, how about you? Any technology on the horizon?
Yep.
You want to encourage people to use or explore?
I think the other thing that's been gaining a lot of renewed focus is interoperability. And, early on, there were pilots. GS1 worked in collaboration with the Global Dialogue for Seafood Traceability, IFT. There were a number of stakeholders like Beaver Street, Bumblebee, Chicken of the Sea, and then a whole host of solution providers that did a pilot to share seafood traceability data across, like from catch all the way to store. And that was done both with cloud-based and blockchain solutions. And what the pilot established was that standards were necessary to identify products and entities. Critical tracking events and key data elements needed to be standardized to support interoperability of systems, right? So that work was done early on. But now, as companies are implementing, the interoperability discussion is back, right? And so lots of companies are looking at whether it's business to business or it's third party solutions, et cetera. How can we share this data across systems? And that interoperability component has become essential as companies are digitizing their traceability programs. And so I think that's another area of technology where we've seen renewed focus. And at the end of last year, with as we got through the shutdown and all that, FSMA 204 and the extension were part of that legislation. And so the FDA has now been instructed to conduct additional pilots. And so I anticipate that as part of that work over the coming months, that we would see some more of that interoperability data exchange being done formally through pilots.
Lucy, what else? What else are you passionate about right now and want to make sure that whoever is listening pays attention to it?
Yeah, something that is pretty new, I guess, in the food space, because healthcare has used it quite a bit, is EPCIS, Electronic Product Code Information Services. And this is not, it's very fancy term, but really what it means is it's just a language that can be used, standardized language to communicate, between systems and partners. And for a while, it was like, wow, this is complicated. But now we have a lot of tools and we're having a lot of conversations in the food industry to demystify EPCIS. It is not as complicated as you think. And we are seeing big leading retailers really focused on implementing this for their traceability systems. We, GS1 US, have a lot of resources available that everyone can use at no cost.
All right, Julie, as the chair of AIM North America's food supply chain work group, can you talk a little bit about what AIM does within the industry and why it's so important to get involved?
Yeah, and thank you for that. At the beginning, when you did the introduction, you talked about, who AIM is and what we do. But to build on that, certainly it is a community of work groups, focus groups, industry groups, and it brings stakeholders together. This is a little bit different than some of the industry specific groups. Like Produce Traceability Initiative is great, and it has stakeholders from across the industry, but the solution provider layer is a little thin. Whereas it's the opposite at AIM. AIM is heavier on solution providers. Certainly, we have other associations, suppliers, distributors, operators, grocers. Like, we have folks in other categories, healthcare and other cannabis and other areas. So I think the difference is the makeup of the groups and the folks who participate. But what makes it so interesting is that as we're tackling industry issues, as we're collaborating and having these discussions, you've got the experts on the call. So when someone is trying to solve a business issue and they're suggesting, hey, I'd like to put this printer in the field and do XYZ, the guy who actually makes the thermal printers and those labels knows exactly why that will or will not work based on current capabilities, conditions, etc. And so it's a nice combination of partners that we're all working towards that same goal, right? Of solving business uh, problems, enhancing business processes, streamlining, as Christian talked about earlier. But also because we have the experts, we don't spend tons of time chasing something down that's not going to work, right? And so I am not an expert, for example, in thermal printing, but I very specifically remember a phone call where we talked about doing something where we were increasing the fonts and they were going to get pretty close to the edge of the label. And somebody from a thermal printing company said, here's why that won't work. Because of the roller and the label and the printer and the this and the that. I never would have known that. So it's a great collaboration. The other thing I will say is the education. And we've been doing some new educational programs here at AIM, including on-site workshops where they bring industry partners in, other solution providers, et cetera, and it's hands-on. People are threading the labels into the printer. They're touching the RFID tags, and we've got experts from University of Memphis and other groups that are helping folks understand how this is used in business, so that they can then take that back to their organization. So I cannot say enough good things about AIM. If you're interested, any of us on this call would be happy to talk to you about engaging with AIM and our work groups.
Yeah, totally agree, Julie. The experience, the knowledge, the learning gained by the collaboration of the individuals they're already in AIM. I think it's very cultivated, right? It's like engage with these people, connect with them, get experiences from them. There's a lot to be shared and learned there. And I'm certainly leveraging that. I'm not the expert either. Julie, there's a lot to be learned from these folks, and they're certainly knowledgeable, and it's been very helpful in my day-to-day.
Yeah. Would you also say, I would say networking too. I've met a lot of people
100%.
who are the creators of things that we use every day.
Absolutely. Networking and just like you both have said, just the learnings we get from each other. I mean, we never stop learning, and everybody's so passionate about the topics. We are committed. We're there. We're there to help each other, not just during the calls, right? We can call up anyone, and we're there, willing to help. So it's so valuable to be part of this group.
I've learned so much from all three of you. I'm very grateful to be part of this work group. So thank you for being here today and for sharing all your knowledge. Thanks for joining us for this AIM North America podcast. Remember, FSMA 204 compliance is inevitable. Don't wait. And if you want to be part of shaping the standards and solutions, please join us in the work group. We meet the third Thursday of every month. Reach out to any one of us or visit aim-ma.org.